everybody, and welcome. My name is Ernie Arbolis. Welcome to the very first iTalent Digital Insights Microcast. Today, we're going to be talking about AI and specifically focusing on the role with project management. So we have two key questions we're going to be addressing. The first is, how do you better manage a project using AI? And the second is how you better manage an AI project. And so in our panel today, we're going to have Eric Ruhl, who's iTalent Digital's head of a program management office. And so he has a lot of insights on what we do from a project management world. And then we're going to also have Spencer Liu, who heads up the product for Mojo Hire, which is a AI-driven applicant matching job system. And then also Ryan McNaught, who's a leader in this space for data analytics, AI, and business insights. So welcome. And with no further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Eric, who's going to moderate our panel today.
What do you perceive as maybe the greatest benefit towards the typical PM management style in terms of project management? You're managing multiple work streams, multiple stakeholders. How can AI provide a compelling solution for a PM for stakeholder management, for instance?
Yeah, I think in a very simplistic way. So every day when I come onto my tools or the Jira board, I want to know what's in red, right? I want to know what are the risks. So who's falling behind? That who could be momentum of a particular task, or it could be a momentum of a individual contributor. Who's falling behind? You know, how can we actually gather around to support that team or that person to keep moving things forward? And so risk analysis is one thing. Right now, I have to do a lot of manual work to actually dig into the stories, to look at the progress, to do a lot of predictions and analytics in my mind. If that can be done for me so that every day when I come to the dashboard and I just know, okay, here are the red flags, I could just jump immediately into action. I think that's going to save me a lot of work and headache. Again, just purely speaking from my perspective.
Ryan, do you have any thoughts?
Yes, I believe AI has been good at task automation and to date being able to drive milestones and maybe even identify dependencies and issues that might arise. But I think that the PM is in a particular position where they're managing really a project of an experimentation, right? AI requires experimentation. It requires failure before you find the solution that's going to work best for the business. And so that PM needs to be able to understand the importance of pivoting and communicating up the challenges that arise in AI-driven projects.
I think that's a great segue for me, Ryan. So thank you for teeing me up there. My next question was going to be, obviously, there's a lot of complexity and engaging timelines, estimating when things will be done, how things are coming along, managing stakeholder feedback. Do you think AI is it now or in the future going to get to a point where it can naturally assess those things on the fly, provide PMs with feedback in terms of like, hey, this project is changing, you're going to be late on this, you're going to be early on this? How do you think that's going to change the way PMs work, Ryan?
I think there's still a lot to be seen in terms of the evolution of how AI can be embedded in these project management tools. I think some of the current state is more of the milestone-driven approach and task automation and assignment. But who's to say like whether AI can actually help the PM understand certain people's behaviors and how they communicate or their preferences and how they want to be communicated and could potentially help the PM in new and exciting ways there.
Yeah, Eric, if I can just offer some perspective here, because in my position, I kind of oversee a lot of different projects and see the evolution. And I think the stage we're at right now is really sort of beginning how we might use AI tools. So for example, hey, ChatGPT, give me a high-level project plan for a 6-month project, given these variables of complexity. And it's great because it'll spit that out and it'll say, here are the things you need to consider. And so provides a good checklist. I think that's like stage one of what we need to do. I think the next stage is kind of what Ryan's referring to, is we need to now sort of get a very specific instance of ChatGPT that has some of these ideas in it and says, hey, if I give you a risk factor, can you produce a risk model for me given these variables or these inputs? And so now it starts to become more interactive. it would probably need to have some kind of, let's say, database or past practice information for it to draw on to make those inferences. So it's almost like saying, okay, now the next step is making inferences from information we specifically give it, and then it gives us something back. And now we say, but I think it's the same step though. Whatever we put it to it, it gives us back. We still need to evaluate, right? We're still going to need that human interface to say, okay, thanks, GPT, that's great, but let me kind of evaluate this given what I know of the situation or the context.
Awesome, Ernie. And Spencer, do you have any thoughts?
I just think every project can be so specific, right? There are so many different nuances and stuff like that. I think the challenge is, I think the AI capability is there already, but the actual inputting of data and the collection of data across different project types with different personalities, characters, and goals and milestones and attributes, in collecting all of the above in a standardized way to feed into AI so AI can spit something out that's meaningful. I think the kind of standardization of AI input across different variety of project types, that is something that I've been wrapping my brains around, is like, how do you do that? And assuming if you do that successfully, does that actually flatten that AI experience? Because everything else, you are forcing everybody else to use the same methodology to design and develop and push the project forward.
So do you all have any perspective on, obviously we are able to benefit from AI at this moment in terms of adding it into our current repertoire of tools and being able to utilize it. I think as a PM, I might be interested, we're often interested in end-to-end tools, something that can help us from the beginning of the project to the end of it. Ernie kind of referenced earlier using ChatGPT to give us a simple layout and kind of give us some perspective. I don't know that we're necessarily, and you all can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know that we're necessarily to the point where we can just trust it to give us a perfect comprehensive project plan. But do you think that's something that will be achieved in the next 5 years, 10 years? Like, what is your perspective in terms of timeline? I'll start with Spencer.
I think it will happen. I think it will happen. I think at the speed of how AI is being developed right now in all kinds of different industries and different use cases, I think it's going to happen. But the thing that this is me getting a little philosophical, right? The thing that I am kind of concerned about is exactly like what Ernie's case is. Okay, I input something to ChatGPT. Oh, it's so easy. I'm just going to take it the way it is. We have to remind ourselves that AI is always based on data of the past. Right? So the human input or the human innovation cannot be missed. So I think there is one thing about, one perspective is about, okay, can AI get there to help us? Absolutely. But can we also make sure we train the human users who use these AI tools to be strategic and innovative decision makers versus just AI tool users? Again, something that I wrestle with every day. Because ChatGPT is just so easy to use. I just want to take the answer and just run with it.
Yeah.
But it is the data of the past. It is of the past. I'm here to innovate. I'm here to drive for something new to happen.
Yeah. I would just stress that I think AI is going to take us a lot of different places very fast, but I don't think it's going to remove the need for PMs, right? I think the human loop is going to continue to be critical and maybe be more communication focused, but there's always going to be that human element for the foreseeable future to help manage this.
As a PM and as anybody, as we see AI develop, I think it can be quite intimidating, where you think like, am I going to have a job next year? Are we going to get to the point where this is so exponential, where it's progressing at such a rate, I may no longer have a use? And there are those who think that way, that we're going towards like our Terminator style future. And then there are others who are like, this will be kind of a .com thing. It'll be, the Ford to the horse and buggy. Like, yeah, the horse and buggy no longer exists, but we got plenty of jobs on the other side of that. And there's plenty of innovation that comes out of that. So Ryan, I want to go back to something that you said in terms of transformation into more of a communications role. We work with a lot of different personalities in PM. We work with a lot of different people. A lot of our job is developing rapport and understanding what works for them, what doesn't work for them. Do you think AI will develop in the near future the ability to adapt based on basically a personal level. If I say I'm writing an email to Ryan and it's just like, okay, and you're writing this sort of email, so it needs to be written in this sort of tone and this is how it goes over. Do you think that's the sort of thing that we're heading towards?
Honestly, there's already some of that available. How well integrated it is with PM tools and people's ability to get to it is a different question, but some of that already exists. Personality styles have been out there for a long time, and there's a lot of science behind that. One further application that I think is perhaps even in the near future feasible is, have your PM have some controls over all the data that they have accessible to them that can feed an AI chatbot, so that leadership doesn't have to ask the PM where things stand. They can just talk to a chatbot, get the latest on a project, understand, what are the biggest challenges upcoming, what are maybe the milestones that might slip, and not have to necessarily talk to anybody, but have all that data fed into an AI model to speak to it about.
Cool.
That's a great use case. Yeah.
Obviously, another aspect of PM is budgeting, trying to drive costs down, doing what we can to come up with the best solution that we can to do that. Spencer, you kind of hit on it earlier in terms of AI uses previous data. It's not quite to the point where it's actually thinking, it's actually coming up with new ideas. It's aping on old historical information. Do you think as of now, a PM would be able to use an AI tool and derive what the best, the happy path through a project is to determine, okay, this is the software we need to use. This is the sort of check marks we need to hit, the sort of milestones we need to reach. Do you think we're to that point yet, or is that a near future sort of thing?
To me, I'm not there yet, right? I mean, to me, the technology is not quite there yet. Again, maybe I have not seen enough, or I have just not been exposed enough. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going back to some of the previous points, I think the PM role will always exist. However, the content of that role might evolve, or it has to evolve, right? I mean, hopefully we're never going to lose that human aspect of a project or a project communication or a project execution. So the human element must be there. However, what does that human being actually do during the duration of the project? It will evolve, right? So maybe less time gathering data, maybe even less time doing analytics, but becoming more business savvy, maybe understanding more the business value proposition.
No doubt, everybody's going to start introducing AI into their repertoire. They're going to start using it as a tool. As they begin to do that, are there any sort of pitfalls they need to be aware of, any limitations they should be aware of before taking what ChatGPT says whole cloth and saying, we're going to go with this, we're going to call it a day, we're going to move forward with the project as is? What do people need to be aware of as they start to adapt to AI and start to introduce it into their current tool set? I know that's a similar question as asked before, but Spencer, we'll start off with you.
Gosh, that's actually a real hard question, because when you are so immersed in the whole AI tool and technology to help you do certain things on a day-to-day basis, you don't know what you don't know. I mean, AI is brilliant, it's fast, it's sharp, right? It gives you the perfect answer supposedly right on the dot. And you're just naturally immersed in it, and you're naturally drawn to it, but you don't know what you don't know. So again, right, us as independently critical thinking human beings, how do we disconnect ourselves with AI and sharpen our critical thinking and analytical skills without the AI? So therefore, when we are using these AI tools, we are well equipped naturally with our own skill sets, or at least a very critical thinking skill sets. So when we are fed by these powerful AI systems, our intuition kicks in as well, right? This feels good, but it's not quite there. This feels good, but it's kind of wrong, because you know what I mean? I still insist the human being has to be in the control seat. And AI helps us to be more efficient, to be faster, to be quicker. But we have to resist the complete immersiveness of AI, if that makes sense.
So you feel like there's still room for human intuition, huh?
Oh, there has to be. There has to be. Otherwise, I am done, right? So,
If I could add to that, so I think it kind of reminds me of I was doing some consulting work a while back, and I was talking to a teacher, and teachers have this thing called pedagogy. It's how you interact. Like, I'm going to send you a message, I need you to repeat back to me, and then I'm going to check. There's something called check for understanding, and it's kind of like when two people think they're talking about the same thing, but they're not. They're kind of like talking like this as opposed to talking about the. And I think the same thing, Spencer, as you were talking about the relationship really with the AI is like, are we talking about the same thing, or is it something a little bit off? So I'm wondering if there's in our process here, in our pedagogy with working with ChatGPT or any kind of artificial intelligence, do we need to do a check for understanding step that says, okay, I asked ChatGPT, give me a rundown of all the steps I need to do for this kind of a project. It spits it out. Now let me go back and review and say, okay, is that what I was asking it? Is it really answering the question that I asked it, or is my question off?
Ryan, do you have any final thoughts?
If the question's about risk, right, there's a lot of risk that the executives are certainly aware of and becoming more cognizant and protective about, right? There's reputational risk, there's customer risk, there's business risk, and there's so many AI tools now that can be downloaded, and with a few clicks looking at your data, but you don't know what they're doing with that data. You don't know where that data is being stored. Did you just agree to let your customer information go to anyone who's on the other end of that agreement? So that's where I think it behooves people to slow down before speeding up, and that's frankly why we're here to be consultative too with our clients and help them understand all those risks and manage them successfully.
Do you all have any thoughts in terms of how a PM will need to adapt for an AI project? I imagine that it won't be your standard waterfall or even agile methodologies. You'll probably need to do some things a little differently than any project previous to. And so I'm interested in thoughts in terms of how this will develop and push the envelope for project managers, and what they'll need to do to adapt to this environment and successfully lead an AI project. So we'll go ahead and start off with Spencer and get your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, agile is here to stay. No waterfalls for me whatsoever. Everything needs to be divided into the smallest chunks, and you tackle those chunks one little bit at a time. That's just the right way of doing things in order, so that you don't dig a hole for yourself. You can pivot in, you can pivot out. You have that fluidity to change strategy. Sometimes business priorities changes, right? There's so much R&D and research. It's just endless amount of research, testing and research and testing, figuring out which algorithm, which model we should use. Okay, here's 20 of them that we should try out. Okay, 2 weeks later, we've only tried one, and it failed. Okay, now next week, can we try 3? There's a lot of fluidity in managing my AI projects in my context anyway. So I had to kind of adjust my mindset to it, is that at least in the context of what I do with our data scientists every day, there's just a lot of unknown, and we have to allow them the space, right? The space and the flexibility to continue to explore and also fail. And the next question is, okay, how do I manage the business owners? How do I become that bridge that bridges the lack of progress to we really need to achieve something to move the business forward? So then that becomes communication, that becomes presentation of business value and progress, and so on and so forth.
Ryan, do you have any finishing thoughts?
I agree with Spencer. If there's anything better than agile for managing these projects, I'm not aware of it. But that said, right, a PM of an AI project should absolutely be a Scrum Master, get that certification. And then if there's other, technologies or what have you involved, at least have a general awareness of AI and how it's impacting the business, and take some other learning courses on AI if you're not there yet.
Many of our leaders are like, okay, when is it going to get done? And a lot of times there are dependencies with communication or marketing, other things, especially in getting product features out. But how, in an AI world, how do you manage expectation when, as Spencer's talking, he was saying, you got to let them fail. You got to let them try things. That's going to extend that timeline way out there. So I don't know, any tips on like, how do you manage I need it now, like, that sort of appetite?
I think first and foremost, you really, before you embark on this AI driven journey, you really need to understand, is your leadership team committed? And are they invested with budget behind it? It's not a short journey. It's going to take repeated failure before you really find that win. And yeah, I've seen companies not be invested and try and do this. And after 8 weeks of not finding the right insights, they're like, I can't show you ROI, so I can't continue. And it's like, well, you need investment for at least a year or more. It needs to be a multi-year journey.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, that's a hard one. You need to have you need to have the executive sponsorship completely committed, but at the same time, almost every milestone, if you will, right, in the agile world, you break it down into tiny little milestones. Every milestones, as a product manager, as a PM, I'm constantly asking myself, is this really worth the investment? Is this really worth the time and the investment, right? Okay, if we hit it out of the ballpark, how is that going to grow the business, right? I mean, every single milestone I'm assessing, I'm asking these questions because I am spending more money, I am investing more. And if the answer is, okay, we have 65% confidence, okay, do we push forward, right? Can we push until we have 75%? If we actually go backwards, down back to 45, maybe it's time to cut the loss. So it's not necessarily just about finishing the project and deliver. A lot of times it's about killing things too. A lot of times it's just like, guys, we've gone at it for 2 months, right? And we have like 5% success rate. Is it time to give up, right? Is it time to look for something else that can bring a whole lot more business value that based on the learning for the past 2 months, we know we can deliver with much more confidence. So that's what I mean by like the PMs need to be much more strategic now. Like it's almost like moving into a business role to make those assessments on a milestone to milestone basis.
Yeah, it's funny, Spencer. I kind of think of it this way: is we have so much data and so much information, which is great, but it's also bad because we have too much data and information. And I'm wondering if a lot of these artificial intelligence products really need to narrow down and have a very, very tight scope of outcome that we're trying to achieve. And it's really the notion of, let's not be all things to all people. Let's really pick and choose very specifically what the AI is going to help us achieve better, faster, with less cost, less overhead, et cetera. And as I think about what we're doing in an AI project, I think that specificity, it kind of goes back to the question, the chat GPT, the more specific we can get, the more detail we get, the better answer we get. Yeah. It's almost the same thing. What I'm kind of hearing here is in the project, we've got to be super specific about, is it hitting the mark or not? Is it getting us to what we need to do from a client perspective, customer perspective? And it kind of reminds me, I do a lot of process work. And one of the first engagements I ever had, somebody's like, oh, well, let's just automate that. And let's not worry about, improving the process. Let's just automate it. And I stopped for a second. I said, well, okay, let's think about that. So you're just going to automate a broken process. What does that get you? Well, it gets you more errors faster. It's right. So you really need to spend the time to engineer the process right and now enable it. Now let's figure it out. And so I'm wondering if the same tenet holds for AI projects, where we sit there and say, okay, yeah, we can ask it all these questions, but let's be very specific about the questions we're going to ask so we get a very good, robust, specific answer. And I think that's one thing is, as I would PM a project or a delivery, let's think about those things and being very specific to the task of what we were chartered to do to begin with.
Yeah, building on that, Ernie, I think, also asking yourself continuously, like, is what you're working on aligned to the company vision, the broader company vision, right? Is their data and analytics strategic plan detailed enough and in alignment with that? And then are there right metrics being looked at and continuously monitored to tell you how you're doing on progress in that alignment?
Great advice.
It almost sounds to me like we're talking well beyond just a project manager scope, but in terms of the project manager and maybe even the organization at large, what would be valuable for an AI project is adaptability and resilience, because it sounds like you're going to suffer a lot of failure, and you have to be able to look at that failure and say, okay, this didn't turn out the way we want it to, but we learned these three things, and the next project we're going to adapt based on that, and the next one's going to be more successful. And maybe it's not as successful as we want it to be, but we little by little get closer to that 100% where we need it to be. And it sounds like, Ryan, from your perspective, certainly, you need to be able to devote at least a year to make this project successful. It's not something that you can say, we're going to give this thing 3 months, we're going to give it our all, and then you get a month into it and it's not going the way you want it, and you're like, okay, we got to cut our losses. AI is not the thing for us. We're moving on. You really have to have the mettle to be able to say, like, all right, we put a month into this. It's maybe not going the direction we want it to, but let's reevaluate and keep moving on. Is that more or less the message?
Yeah, that's fair. And I do think in my PMs for AI projects, I probably want more of an optimist in that role.
It reminds me of the word grit. There's a woman who wrote a book called Grit, Angela Duckworth, who talks about what are these sort of very specific skills and capabilities and just sort of drive that people have. And I'm just wondering, maybe grit with optimism, right? It's kind of like somebody's just got that stick-to-itiveness. They're going to continue, but has that positive view. And I think positivity certainly carries more of the weight, especially in something like this where there's a lot of unknown. And also, I think confidence. Like, if I'm working for a PM that's like, not very confident, very unsure of themselves, versus a PM that's like, yep, we got some headwinds and got some things, but we'll get through it. And because of that person's reputation or just their attitude, that they're going to make it, and that makes you feel like, okay, I'm going to make it. I'll do my best to deliver for this person, right, in what they're doing. So I think there's a little bit of that comes into the little more of the softer skill stuff, but just as important.
I think most PMs have those, but unfortunately, there's no certification for it. So maybe now's the time to start to get used to it and adapt, and as Ernie said, get some grit, and be prepared for the tenuous journey into AI. It sounds like if you're PMing one of those projects.
We're in a very exciting age, very, very exciting things going on. And I think it's exciting for the technology, but I think it's also exciting for what that draws out of people in terms of smarts, in terms of grit, in terms of just, succeeding in environments where, like, it's not the same old thing. It's something new and different. That's certainly what's attracted me to this space and in terms of the work I've done. So I find it very, very energizing. Spencer, what do you think?
I just want to encourage everyone to monitor very closely how AI is actually changing humanity. It is going to fundamentally change the way we interact with each other, for the good or for worse. Don't know. Let's wait and see, right? I'm kind of right in the middle. I don't know where I stand yet, but one side of me, I'm very excited about it. The other side of me, I cringe a little bit, right? Let's just always remember, we are human beings, we are social beings, we have critical thinking skills, we are independent thinkers, and we can analyze things. AI is here to serve us, to help us to be more efficient and smart. AI is not here to replace us. AI is not here to help me to do less work, right? So anyway, that's kind of where my head's at.
AI has been in our phones, our cars, our living rooms, our businesses for several years already. But I think the next 5 years is going to be a defining moment that none of us can really predict what's going to happen or be like in 5 years' time, but a lot is going to happen.
Cool. Narek, what do you think? Turn the question on.
I am definitely with Spencer on this. I can see the pros and the cons, and I appreciate the people who raise the right moral questions and the right ethical questions in terms of how we navigate this space. I think as human beings, that may not matter to robots, but for humans, those sorts of questions matter a lot. It's clear through the media that we enjoy and the stories that we tell. We've thought about these things for a very long time. And now it's the first time we actually have to reckon with it. So I'm very interested. I slightly concerned, but definitely interested nonetheless, to see how this develops and how it changes the way we live. And hopefully, we're heading more towards the Star Trek future of city perfect utopia rather than, I don't know, like Terminator.
So Eric, thanks so much. And we'll bring it full circle here. So thank you so much for moderating a great panel. And Spencer, thank you. And Ryan, thank you as well. So this will conclude our very first iTalent Digital Insights Microcast. Hope you found it very enjoyable. And for more information on how we can help you be more successful in your world and what you're doing day in and day out, be sure to visit italentdigital.com. Really appreciate it. Have a great day, everybody.